Marginal Gains listeners and fans, coming to you today. We've had a huge week in the field of Everesting. Those of you who listen to the podcast know that we had maybe one of the most fun episodes we've ever done a couple weeks ago. An episode about Everesting where we really just spitballed a ton of ideas out there on what would be the optimal setup for an Everesting. We even talked about the course a little bit. And then I think about 10 days ago, Alberto Contador, those of you who listen know my feelings here, he broke it on a really, I do have to say, a super beautiful lightweight frame, wheels, probably a 5.4 kilo bike. Heck of an effort for him, 724 I think. And then a couple days ago, we had Ronan McLaughlin, this guy, go 7:04. That's 20 minutes, 20 minutes faster than Contador. Super exciting. And then the next morning I got an email from him detailing how he actually used the Marginal Gains podcast to set that record. So 2.5 weeks prior, he had done an 8:04 record attempt, and yeah, he spent the 2 weeks. He started tweaking, tuning. He he did almost everything we said, starting with the aero/vented helmet. He used a cask. This is the Laser, which my friends at Laser were so kind to send after we talked about using this helmet ideally for your Everesting attempt. Why is that? Well, this helmet has an aero mode here, and we can slide it open, and now it's ventilated. So on the downhills, you know, it's kind of a TT helmet, and on the climbs, it's much more ventilated to help control your body temperature. Huge savings can be had in the helmet. He also took to using some of our gearing recommendations. He only ran 3 cogs in the rear, so he was running a 1x3 drivetrain for this attempt. You know, we had theorized actually a 1x6 or 1x5, where it was going to be something like a 12, 13, and then a 25, 28, 30, or 32. He brought his own innovation though, and that is what I think is so cool. Taking what we developed in our podcast and then really you know, ratcheting that up a couple of levels. So the helmet, the skin suit, he did aero socks, he had aero shoe covers, which actually ended up slowing him down a little bit as they got wet and they sagged and began to fall off, and he lost about 20 seconds on 2 of the descents removing them. But he still really focused on the aero gains as well as the weight gains. But then this is where I think it gets, his innovation is most exciting for me. The record he did, 3 weeks ago now, was on this course, looking like this. And what we see is he had a little bit of a flat run out at the bottom, and he was turning around a little after the steepest part of the climb. And he had the realization that if he would turn around at the steepest point, he could really just descend like a rock. This climb, I mean, you look at these numbers, it's a 14% average grade, but at the peak, where he put the turnaround point, 24% average grade. So he really could not have pedaled downhill at that point, even if he wanted to, because by the time you could get the gear change accomplished, you're already going about as fast as you're already aerodynamically limited, and it's time for the tuck. He also shortened the bottom of the climb, you can see here, up a little bit, so that he was turning around on a steeper area of the climb. But when we look at that in total, these 2 tweaks shortened his ride up by 37 kilometers. And so that is a heck of a way to take time out of the event, right? Is just shortening down the overall distance. So even if you're going slower, on average, you're going less far. I will say, a little plug for this show, we have an interview coming up with him I did yesterday, super inspiring. I mean, he talks a little bit, we actually talk very little about the bike. We talk diet, we talk psychology, we talk about, you know, how in the hell can you do 2 Everesting attempts 2 weeks apart? That is mind-boggling to me. this attempt here on this climb, 80 ascents with an average wattage of 300, but he's really doing it with sort of a ramp. He's running about 300 watts, peaking at 370 in the steepest part of the climb, right before the turnaround. So I'm excited. I think stay tuned to this channel. We are wrapping and shaping up that interview right now, so you can hear from Ronan himself. Maybe even more exciting, we did some of our marginal gains mathematics in the back end, and I convinced him that there's some more time for him to save. I think he left some time on the table, and he seems to be game for a third attempt, which is pretty darn exciting. So stay tuned for both our interview and his hopeful third attempt coming up. Last but not least in here, part of Ronan's contacting us, which really just made my heart feel pretty amazing, was that he listened to the podcast about a dozen times in developing this setup. He used the super secret chain lube, which saves him a couple of watts. He used some SILCA speed shields, and last but not least, he had the SILCA Pelote super aero thin handlebar tape, and then he removed it at the last minute when he cut the drops off the handlebars, as you can see there. What did that do for him? Well, cutting the drops off saved 69 grams. That probably saved him somewhere on the order of 45 seconds to a minute of climbing time. But this is one, if you go back and look at our CDA episode, the drops of the handlebars are a terrible, terrible shape, right? Because they are round, a very high CD shape. And so he took the worst possible shape off the bike, and then he took all of the frontal area of the two drop bars. If we want to make a quick estimate there, you say the drop distance is probably 70 millimeters. The width of that round tubing is around 20 millimeters. So we call that 100 and 1400 square millimeters, something like that, coming out of the system. That is pretty phenomenal. When you really think about the addition. I did some quick math on it, just dropping that CDA off of a system, and on the descending side, that change saved him over a minute and a half, possibly as much as 2 minutes. So, I think he did it as a weight savings and actually ended up saving himself probably close to twice that amount of time in an aerodynamic sense on the descending sections of the race. So what an awesomely fun marginal gain that to get both the benefit and an even bigger unexpected benefit. So please remember, give us a like, please share. We are going to come back and talk even further in detail about some of the techniques and the tweaks. And then I think we're probably going to have some content around the next attempt, the third attempt for Ronan McLaughlin, as he goes to targets breaking 7 hours in Everesting. Craziness. Craziness. Crazy. And lastly, Marginal Gains listeners, we want to hear from you. I've got about 25 ideas that I think we should look at with Ronan's setup. I know he's got a bunch of ideas of his own, but you guys are listening to the show and the podcast. I want to hear what you think. What products, what ideas, what tweaks, what modifications interest you? What do you want to talk about, and what should we try modeling in our little Everesting hill climb model that we built to understand the magnitude of some of the effects of these changes? So please leave those ideas in your comments below, and we will get back to you on the next Marginal Gains TV.